The diner's fluorescent lights hummed their usual tired song, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made even the freshest pie look days old. My feet ached. That deep, bone-weary throb that comes from 10-hour shifts in shoes held together more by hope than stitching. The vinyl of my uniform clung to my back, damp with sweat and the grease that seemed to permeate every surface of Rosie's 24-hour diner. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday, and the place was nearly empty. Just how I liked it during the final hour of my shift. Fewer customers meant fewer forced smiles, fewer honey and sweethearts from men old enough to be my grandfather, fewer opportunities to mess up and lose the tips I desperately needed. I wiped down the counter for the third time, the circular motions automatic, meditative. The smell of burnt coffee and fried onions had long since stopped bothering me. It was the scent of survival, of another day closer to making rent, of keeping the lights on in my shoebox apartment, where the heat barely worked, and the neighbors fought loud enough to rattle my walls. "Emma, you look like death warmed over," Rosie called from the kitchen, her gravelly smoker's voice somehow comforting in its familiarity. "Go home early. I'll close up." "Can't," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Need the hours." She didn't argue. She knew. Everyone in this neighborhood knew what it meant to need the hours. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up, my customer service smile already plastered on my face. Then it faltered. 3 men walked in, and they didn't belong here. Not in this greasy spoon where the clientele consisted of truck drivers, insomniacs, and people with nowhere else to go. These men wore suits, real suits, the kind I'd only seen in magazine ads and movies. The fabric moved like liquid shadow. Probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The first 2 were clearly muscle. Broad shoulders, eyes that swept the room with professional assessment, hands that rested too casually near their jacket fronts. They moved with synchronized precision, flanking the third man like they'd done it 1,000 times before. But it was him, the third man, who stole the oxygen from my lungs. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, straight nose, lips pressed into a line that suggested he rarely smiled, but it was his eyes that caught me. Dark, almost black in the diner's poor lighting, and absolutely unreadable. He wore his power like a second skin, comfortable and undeniable. I'd seen men like him before, from a distance. Men who made the neighborhood quiet when they walked through. Men whose names were whispered, never spoken aloud. He shouldn't be here. "Welcome to Rosie's," I heard myself say, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sit anywhere you'd like." One of the guards, the one with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, pulled out a chair at the corner booth. The location wasn't random, I realized. It faced the door, had a view of both entrances, and put his back to the wall. The boss, because that's what he had to be, sat with fluid grace, adjusting his cufflinks with fingers that looked strong despite their elegance. The guards remained standing, one by the door, one near the booth. They didn't sit. They didn't relax. They watched. I grabbed 3 menus, even though I suspected these men didn't come here for the meatloaf special. My sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as I approached, each step feeling like walking through water. Up close, I could smell him. Expensive cologne that had notes of cedar, and something darker, richer. It was the kind of scent that didn't come from a department store. "Coffee," he said before I could offer the menus. His voice was low, controlled, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Black." "Of course." I set down the menus anyway, my hands not quite steady. "Anything else?" His eyes met mine for the first time. Really met them. And I felt the impact like a physical touch. There was something predatory in that gaze, something that assessed and catalogued and filed away every detail of my existence. I wondered what he saw. A tired waitress with blonde hair coming loose from its ponytail, circles under her green eyes, a name tag that read Emma in faded letters. "Not yet," he said, and somehow those 2 words felt loaded with meaning I couldn't decipher. I retreated to the coffee station, my pulse hammering in my throat. Rosie had disappeared into the back office, probably sensing trouble and wanting no part of it. Smart woman. I should have done the same, but I needed this job. I needed every shift, every tip, every hour I could scrape together. So I poured the coffee, fresh pot, not the sludge that had been sitting since 9, and walked it back to the table. Here you go. I set the cup down carefully, trying not to notice how his fingers brushed the ceramic, long and purposeful. Just let me know if you need anything else. Your name is Emma. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. The sir came automatically, some instinct recognizing hierarchy, danger, power. You've worked here how long? The question caught me off guard. Why would he care? 2 years. Almost 3. He nodded slowly, lifting the coffee to his lips. His movements were economical, precise. Nothing wasted. Late shift. Someone has to take it. I tried for casual, for normal, even though my heart was trying to break free from my ribcage. Better tips, usually. One corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, more like the acknowledgement of a joke I hadn't meant to tell. Is that so? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, sleek, expensive, probably encrypted, and his expression shuttered completely. Whatever he read there changed something in the air. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood abruptly, and the guards immediately straightened, alert. He pulled out his wallet, black leather, probably Italian, and extracted a $50 bill for a $3 cup of coffee. Keep the change, he said, already moving toward the door. They were gone in seconds, smooth and coordinated, disappearing into a black SUV with tinted windows that had been idling at the curb. I stood there holding the 50, staring at it like it might vanish if I blinked. Emma! Rosie's voice cracked through my stupor. What the hell was that? I don't know, I whispered. And I didn't. But the 50 in my hand felt heavy, significant, like the beginning of something I didn't understand. I tucked it into my apron and finished my shift in a daze, wiping tables that were already clean, refilling napkin holders that didn't need it. When midnight finally came, I clocked out, counted my tips, $63 including his 50, and walked out into the cold November night. The walk home was always the worst part. 14 blocks through streets that got progressively darker, past buildings with broken windows and alleys that exhaled the smell of garbage and desperation. I kept my keys threaded between my fingers, my pepper spray in my other hand, my head down, but my awareness sharp. I was 3 blocks from my apartment when I heard it. A groan, low and pained, coming from the alley to my right. Every instinct screamed at me to keep walking. Nothing good happened in alleys at midnight. Nothing good happened to women who investigated groans in the dark. But I heard it again, weaker this time, and my feet betrayed me, turning toward the sound. The alley was darker than the street, shadows pooling like spilled ink between dumpsters and fire escapes. I pulled out my phone, turning on the flashlight with shaking fingers. The beam caught him immediately. He was slumped against the brick wall, one hand pressed to his side where dark liquid, blood, so much blood, seeped between his fingers. His suit was ruined, torn and soaked. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. It was him, the man from the diner. Oh my God, I breathed, already moving forward even though every survival instinct I had screamed danger. What happened? Who did this? His eyes opened, those dark, fathomless eyes, and focused on me with difficulty. Recognition flickered across his features, followed by something that might have been surprise. You? He managed, his voice rough with pain. The waitress. Don't talk. I dropped to my knees beside him, my phone clattering to the ground, its light casting grotesque shadows. Blood. There was so much blood. I need to call 911. His hand shot out, faster than should have been possible for someone losing that much blood, and gripped my wrist. His touch was hot, slick with blood, and absolutely firm. No. The word was a command, even weakened as he was. No hospitals. No police. You're dying. My voice cracked, panic flooding through me. You need help. Call. He fumbled in his jacket pocket with his free hand, his movements growing weaker. Phone. Call Dante. First contact. He managed to pull out his phone. The screen was cracked but still glowing, and thrust it toward me. His grip on my wrist loosened, and his hand fell away, leaving smears of crimson on my skin. I stared at the phone, then at him, my mind racing through impossibilities. If I called whoever Dante was, I was involved. If I called 911, he'd made it clear what would happen. Nothing good, probably for either of us. If I did nothing, he would die here in this alley, and I would be the last person who'd seen him alive. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped his phone. The screen was locked, but the emergency call feature was available. I found the contacts. There were only about 20, all first names or initials. Dante was right there at the top, marked with a red star. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, a voice answered, sharp, alert, immediately wary. Boss? This isn't... I'm not... I swallowed hard, looking down at the man who was now unconscious, his breathing shallow. He's hurt. Badly. He's in an alley on Madison, between 5th and 6th. There's blood. A lot of blood. And he said no hospitals, but he needs help now. Who is this? The voice had gone cold. Dangerous. Emma, I work at Rosie's diner. He was there earlier, and I found him. And he told me to call you. Stay there. Don't move. Don't call anyone else. We're 3 minutes out. The line went dead. I knelt there in the dirty alley, my jeans soaking through with something I didn't want to identify, staring at the unconscious Mafia boss, because that's what he had to be, and wondering what the hell I'd just done. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. I pressed my hands against his wound, trying to remember high school health class, trying to slow the bleeding even though I had no idea if I was helping or making it worse. His skin was cold now, too cold, and his breathing had become so shallow I had to press my ear close to his mouth to make sure he was still alive. Then I heard them. The squeal of tires, the slam of doors, the thunder of footsteps. Light flooded the alley, blinding and harsh, and suddenly there were men everywhere. 6, maybe 7, all armed, all moving with that same coordinated precision I'd seen in the diner. Back away from him! The voice was the one from the phone, Dante, I assumed. He was shorter than the boss, stockier, with gray at his temples and eyes like chips of ice. I scrambled backward, my blood-soaked hands raised in surrender. 2 men moved past me immediately, dropping to assess their boss with professional efficiency. One was already on a phone, speaking rapid fire in what sounded like Italian. Dante crouched in front of me, his expression unreadable. You found him like this? Yes. My voice was barely a whisper. I was walking home from work and I heard him. I didn't know what else to do. You called us instead of the police. He told me to. He said no hospitals, no police. He said to call you. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Respect, maybe, or surprise. Smart girl. You probably saved his life. He stood, barking orders in Italian. They had a stretcher now, from somewhere, and were already loading the boss onto it with practiced care. Is he going to be okay? I asked, even though I had no right to know. No reason to care beyond basic human decency. Dante looked at me for a long moment. That depends on the next few hours. Go home, Emma. Forget this happened. But go home. His voice had hardened into command. This isn't your world. This isn't your problem. You did a good thing tonight, but now you walk away. Understand? I nodded, even though I didn't understand anything. They were loading him into a different SUV now, moving with urgent precision. In less than 2 minutes, they were gone. And the alley was empty except for me and the dark stains on the concrete that would probably never completely wash away. I stood there for a long time, staring at my hands. They were covered in his blood, dried and flaking on my palms, crusted under my fingernails. My jeans were ruined. My phone screen was cracked where I'd dropped it. And I had $10 left in my wallet until payday next week. I'd used my last $50 to pay for an Uber to get home, too shaken to walk. The driver had taken one look at my blood-stained appearance and nearly refused the fare until I'd started crying. Explaining I'd helped someone injured, he'd driven fast and asked no questions. Now I sat in my cold apartment, the shower running, trying to scrub his blood from my skin and wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, pale and bleeding, his hand gripping my wrist with that desperate strength. His eyes finding mine even through the pain. I saw the blood, dark and endless, pooling beneath him. I heard Dante's voice. Forget this happened. But how could I forget something like that? By the time weak November sunlight filtered through my apartment's grimy window, I'd convinced myself it had been a terrible dream. Some fever-induced hallucination brought on by exhaustion and too many double shifts. I'd go to work, and everything would be normal. The diner would smell like burnt coffee and hope. Rosie would complain about her ex-husband. The regulars would leave their usual mediocre tips. Normal, safe, predictable. I pulled on my spare uniform. The bloodied one from last night was balled up in a plastic bag under my sink, and I couldn't bring myself to even look at it, and headed to the diner for the morning shift. My fingers trembled as I tied my apron, and the circles under my eyes had deepened to bruises, but I smiled at the early customers and poured coffee with steady hands. "You look worse than usual," Rosie observed around 10 a.m., when the breakfast rush had finally died down. "You sick?" "Didn't sleep well." It wasn't a lie. "Well, try not to collapse on my floor. I got health inspectors coming next week." But her eyes were kind, concerned in that gruff way of hers. I made it through the morning in a fog, going through the motions, forcing normalcy. By noon, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. Then the door opened. 2 men walked in, and ice flooded my veins. Not the boss. These were different, though they carried themselves with the same coiled danger. One was tall and rail-thin, with a face like a hatchet. The other was built like a truck, with hands that could probably crush skulls. Both wore dark suits. Both moved with that predatory grace that set every nerve ending I had screaming. They headed straight for me. "Emma Hartley?" The thin one's voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle. My mouth went dry. "Yes?" "We need you to come with us." The diner went silent. Even the grill stopped sizzling. I felt every eye turn toward us, felt the weight of attention like a physical pressure. I'm working." My voice came out steady despite the terror clawing up my throat. "My shift doesn't end until 3. It ends now." The big one spoke for the first time, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. Rosie appeared from the kitchen, her expression fierce. "The girl said she's working. You got a problem with that? Take it up with me." The thin man's eyes flicked to her, assessing and dismissing in one smooth motion. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this doesn't concern you. Emma, we're not asking. Mr. Russo would like to see you." Mr. Russo. So that was his name. "Is he—" I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles went white. "Is he alive?" Something that might have been approval crossed the thin man's face. "Very much so. And he's requested your presence. We have a car waiting." "Emma, don't you dare!" Rosie started, but I was already untying my apron. "It's okay," I lied, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'll be fine." "Like hell you will. These are—" "I know what they are." I met her eyes, trying to communicate something I couldn't say aloud with half the diner watching. "It's okay, Rosie. Really." I could see her wrestling with it, the desire to protect me versus the wisdom of knowing when a fight couldn't be won. Finally, she nodded, her jaw tight. "You call me if you need anything. Anything." "I will." The thin man held the door open, and I walked through it on legs that felt like water. Outside, a black SUV idled at the curb, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, license plates that looked somehow official and anonymous at once. The big one opened the back door. I hesitated at the threshold, every survival instinct screaming at me not to get in. Once I stepped into that vehicle, there was no going back. This was the moment. The line between my world and theirs. Between safety and something else entirely. "Miss Hartley." The thin man's voice was patient but firm. "Please." I climbed in. The interior smelled like leather and money. The seats were soft, heated despite the mild day. The thin man slid in beside me while the big one took the front passenger seat. A driver I hadn't noticed before pulled smoothly into traffic. Nobody spoke. I sat with my hands clasped in my lap, watching the city slide by through tinted windows that made everything look darker, more ominous. We left my neighborhood quickly, the run-down buildings and struggling businesses giving way to nicer areas, tree-lined streets, renovated brownstones, restaurants with actual tablecloths visible through their windows. Then we went even further, into a part of the city I'd only seen in magazines. Luxury high-rises that pierced the sky like glass needles. Doormen in uniforms more expensive than anything in my closet. Cars that cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. We pulled into an underground garage beneath one of these towers, all concrete and shadows and the echo of wealth. The big man opened my door, and I stepped out on shaking legs. This way. The thin one gestured toward a private elevator, the kind that required a key card to even call. He swiped his card, and the doors opened immediately. We rode up in silence. I watched the numbers climb, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, until finally stopping at 40. The penthouse, I realized. Of course it was the penthouse. The doors opened directly into an apartment. No hallway, no other doors, just straight into a space that stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the entire city, making it look small and manageable from this height. The floors were dark hardwood, gleaming like black mirrors. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive, all clean lines and quality materials. Art hung on the walls, pieces I vaguely recognized from museum visits on school field trips years ago. And there, standing by the windows with his back to us, was him. He wore different clothes than last night. Black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Even from behind, I could see the bandages wrapped around his torso, visible through the thin fabric. He was on the phone, speaking low and rapid in Italian, his free hand gesturing with controlled emphasis. "Sir," the thin man said softly, "she's here." He turned, and whatever he was saying died mid-sentence. His eyes found mine across the expanse of polished floor, and I felt that same electric impact I'd felt in the diner. He said something quick into the phone and ended the call, slipping it into his pocket. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. He looked pale still, with shadows under his eyes that matched mine. But he was alive. Standing. Moving. The wound that should have killed him hadn't. "Thank you, Marco. Luca. You can go." His voice was stronger than it had been in the alley, but still rough around the edges, like he was working through pain. The two men left without a word, and suddenly I was alone with him. The silence stretched, thick, and weighted with things I couldn't name. "You're alive," I finally said, because someone had to say something, thanks to you. He moved toward me slowly, each step measured and careful. Up close, I could see the pallor beneath his olive skin, the tight lines around his mouth that spoke of controlled agony. The doctors said another 10 minutes, maybe 15, and I would have bled out. Doctors that make house calls? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His mouth quirked. That almost smile again, something like that. "Sit. Please." He gestured to a leather sofa that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. I sat stiffly on the edge, too aware of my stained sneakers on his pristine floor, my cheap uniform in his palace of wealth. He lowered himself into the chair across from me with visible effort, his jaw tightening. "Do you know who I am?" "Mr. Russo." I twisted my hands in my lap. "And I can guess the rest." "Can you?" "You're..." I searched for words that wouldn't sound accusatory or naive. "You're someone important, someone dangerous, someone people don't say no to." A tactful assessment. He leaned back carefully, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "My name is Dominic Russo, and yes, I am dangerous. I am what polite society would call a criminal, what the streets call a boss, what my enemies call dead man walking, though last night proved them premature." His bluntness caught me off guard. "Why am I here?" "Because you saved my life." He said it simply, as if it explained everything. "Because you called Dante instead of the police, even though calling the police would have been the smart, safe choice. Because you stayed with me, tried to stop the bleeding, put yourself at risk for a stranger you'd seen once for 10 minutes in a diner. Anyone would have..." "No." The word cut through the air like a blade. "Most people would have kept walking. Many would have called 911 and disappeared before the sirens arrived. You did neither. You stayed. You helped. In my world, Miss Hartley, that kind of loyalty is rare, that kind of courage is priceless, and I pay my debts. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, heavy cream paper, the kind they probably didn't even sell in regular stores. He set it on the coffee table between us. What is that? My voice was barely a whisper. Open it. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. Inside were several documents. Papers with official-looking letterhead, numbers that made my vision blur. I don't understand, I breathed, staring at what looked like a lease agreement for an apartment, in a building I'd passed 100 times but never dreamed of entering. You will no longer live in that falling-apart building on Madison, Dominic said, his voice matter of fact. The apartment is yours, lease paid for 2 years, utilities included. There's also a bank account in your name with enough to cover your expenses for the same period. I looked up at him, shock rendering me speechless. The numbers I'd glimpsed, they had more zeros than my brain could process. I can't accept this. The words felt hollow even as I said them. You can. You will. There was steel beneath the politeness. You saved my life, Emma. In my world, a life debt is sacred. This is not charity. This is payment. Refusing would be unwise. The unspoken threat hung in the air. But somehow it didn't feel threatening. It felt like something else. An inevitability, maybe. A door that had opened and couldn't be closed. Why so much? I whispered. I just called for help. Anyone would have, but they didn't. You did. He leaned forward, wincing at the movement. And in doing so, you made yourself visible to me. In my line of work, Miss Hartley, visibility is dangerous. By helping me, you painted a target on your back. Every enemy I have, and I have many, would see you as leverage if they knew what you'd done. So you will accept this gift. You will move to the new apartment today, and you will allow my people to ensure your safety. Your people? Alarm bells rang in my head. You mean guards? Watching me? Protecting you. His eyes held mine, and I saw something flicker there, something almost like regret. I've brought you into my world, Emma, whether you wanted it or not. The moment you touched my blood, the moment you called Dante, you became part of this. I cannot undo that, but I can make sure you survive it. My heart hammered against my ribs. And if I refuse, if I just go back to my life, pretend this never happened, then you would be dead within a week. He said it without emotion, just cold fact. The men who tried to kill me last night, they saw you. They saw you find me, saw you on your phone calling for help. They know your face now, and they will come for you to find out what you know, what I might have told you in that alley. The room spun. I gripped the envelope so hard the paper crumpled. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. His voice softened fractionally. I am sorry, Emma. Truly. You showed me kindness, and I have repaid it by dragging you into darkness. But there is no going back now, only forward. And forward means accepting my protection. I stared at him. This beautiful, dangerous man who had somehow become my salvation and my doom in the same breath. Part of me wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from this nightmare, but a larger part, a part I didn't want to examine too closely, felt something else. Relief. Relief that someone was offering to save me from the cold apartment and the endless shifts and the bone-deep exhaustion of barely surviving. Relief that maybe, just maybe, I could stop fighting so hard just to exist. What do I have to do? I heard myself ask. Accept the apartment. Allow Marco and Luca to move your belongings today. What little you have, I'm told. Quit the diner. You will be compensated for lost wages. And, he paused, something unreadable crossing his face. And occasionally, I may need to see you, to ensure you are safe, to fulfill the terms of this arrangement. Terms? Every contract has terms, Miss Hartley. Mine are simple. You live under my protection. You tell no one about what happened last night or about our arrangement. And when I call, you come. The last part felt weighted with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. And if I break the terms? His smile was cold. Let's not find out. I should have been terrified. Should have thrown the envelope back at him and run for the elevator. Consequences be damned, but instead, I found myself nodding, sealing a bargain I didn't fully understand with a man who held my life in his scarred, elegant hands. Good. He stood carefully, reaching for a phone on the side table. Marco will take you to the apartment. Your belongings will be there by tonight. I've taken the liberty of having some clothes and necessities delivered as well. I hope I estimated your sizes correctly. Heat flooded my cheeks at the thought of him considering such intimate details. That wasn't necessary. Perhaps not. But I am not a man who does anything halfway, Emma. The way he said my name, low and deliberate, sent shivers down my spine. When I protect something, I do it completely. When I pay a debt, I pay it in full. You will learn this about me. Marco appeared as if summoned, silent and efficient. Dominic gave him instructions in rapid Italian, then turned back to me. Go. Settle in. Someone will contact you soon about the other arrangements. His eyes held mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary. And Emma? Welcome to my world. Try not to let it swallow you whole. The apartment was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a part of the city I'd only ever seen from below. Hardwood floors gleamed under recessed lighting that seemed to know exactly how bright to be. The kitchen had appliances I didn't know the names for, all stainless steel and touchscreens. The bedroom. God, the bedroom. Had a bed so large I could have fit my entire previous apartment inside it. I stood in the middle of the living room, still wearing my diner uniform, feeling like an imposter. Like any moment, someone would realize the mistake and throw me back onto the streets where I belonged. Your belongings are in the bedroom, Miss Hartley. Marco stood by the door, his expression neutral. Mr. Russo has also arranged for a car service. The number is programmed into your new phone, which you'll find on the kitchen counter. Use it whenever you need transportation. A car service. I repeated the words like they were a foreign language. I don't need. You do. His tone was polite but firm. Mr. Russo insists for your safety. Right. Safety. Because I was apparently now a target for whoever had tried to kill Dominic Russo in that alley. The reality of it hit me again, making my knees weak. I sank onto the leather sofa, butter soft, probably Italian, and put my head in my hands. Miss Hartley. Marco's voice softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming, but Mr. Russo doesn't make decisions lightly. If he says you're in danger, you are. If he says you need protection, you do. Trust in that, if nothing else. I looked up at him. How long have you worked for him? 15 years. Something like pride entered his expression. He saved my life once, too. Took me off the streets when I had nothing. Gave me purpose. I would die for him without hesitation. The devotion in his voice was absolute, unsettling. What kind of man inspires that level of loyalty? Marco's smile was thin, the kind worth following into hell. The kind who protects his own with everything he has. You'll understand in time. He moved toward the door. We'll be nearby if you need anything. Don't leave the building without calling the car service first. And Emma? He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Welcome to the family. And then he was gone, and I was alone in an apartment that cost more per month than I made in a year, wearing a stained uniform that smelled like grease and old coffee, with a phone full of numbers I didn't recognize, and a life that no longer felt like my own. I called Rosie first. She answered on the second ring. Emma, Jesus Christ, are you okay? Where are you? Do I need to call the police? I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. Rosie, I can't come back to the diner. Silence. Then, what did they do to you? Nothing. They didn't hurt me. I can't explain, but I can't come back. I'm sorry. Emma, whatever they're offering, whatever they're threatening, it's not like that. Another lie, or maybe not. I didn't know anymore. I'm safe. I promise. I need you to trust me. More silence, heavy with judgment and worry. Finally, you call me if you need help. Anytime, day or night. You understand? I understand. My voice cracked. Thank you, Rosie, for everything. I ended the call before she could argue further, before I could hear the disappointment I knew would be in her voice. The rest of the day passed in a blur. My belongings arrived, 2 cardboard boxes that looked pathetic sitting in the massive bedroom. Everything I owned in the world, barely enough to fill a closet that could have housed a small family. But there were other boxes, too. Designer clothes in my size. How had he known? Still bearing tags with prices that made my head spin. Shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. Toiletries from brands I'd only seen in magazine ads. Everything I could possibly need, provided by a man I'd met twice. A man who now owned me, in a way. That thought should have terrified me. Instead, it made something dark and confusing twist in my chest. I showered in a bathroom with heated floors and a shower head that felt like standing in warm rain. I changed into jeans that actually fit and a sweater softer than anything I'd ever touched. I made tea in a kitchen with the espresso machine that probably required an engineering degree to operate. And then I stood at the windows and watched the city below, all those people going about their normal lives, unaware that everything had changed for the waitress who used to pour their coffee. My new phone buzzed. An unknown number. "How are you settling in?" D. My heart stuttered. He was texting me. The Mafia boss who I'd found bleeding in an alley was casually texting me like this was normal. "It's overwhelming," I typed back. "But beautiful. Thank you." The response came quickly. "You deserve beautiful things, Emma." I stared at those words, trying to parse their meaning. Was this just part of paying his debt? Or was there something else beneath the surface? "You should be resting," I sent. "You were nearly dead yesterday. I've been nearly dead many times. It loses its impact." The cavalier way he said it made my chest tighten. What kind of life had he lived that near death was routine? "That's not funny," I typed. "No, it's not. But it's true." A pause. The 3 dots appearing and disappearing several times before the next message came through. "I need to see you tomorrow. There are things we need to discuss. Marco will bring you to my office at noon." My hands trembled on the phone. What things? Things that can't be discussed over text. Things you need to understand about your new situation. Our arrangement, you mean? Yes. I should have asked more questions, should have demanded answers now, not tomorrow. But instead, I just typed, "Okay. Good. Sleep well, Emma. You're safe now." I wasn't sure I believed him, but I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. That night, I slept in silk sheets on a mattress that felt like floating on clouds, and I dreamed of dark eyes and blood and hands that could kill, but had held me with unexpected gentleness. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The alley, the blood, Dominic Russo, and his impossible offer that I'd accepted. I dressed carefully in the new clothes, feeling like I was putting on a costume. The woman in the mirror looked like me but wasn't. She had better clothes, smoother skin from actual good sleep, eyes that weren't quite so haunted. But beneath the surface, I was still the same scared girl who counted pennies and worked double shifts just to survive. Marco arrived at 11:30, punctual to the minute. "Ready, Miss Hartley?" "As I'll ever be." The drive took 20 minutes through morning traffic. We ended up in the financial district, pulling into the underground garage of a sleek office building. Marco led me to another private elevator, using another key card. "His legitimate businesses are run from this building," Marco explained as we rode up. "Import-export, real estate, investments, all very legal, very profitable. And the illegal ones?" His smile was brief. "Those are handled elsewhere." The elevator opened onto the top floor. More windows, more expensive furniture, more evidence of wealth beyond my comprehension. A receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine greeted us with a professional smile. "Miss Hartley, Mr. Russo is expecting you. Right this way." She led me down a hallway lined with abstract art, stopping at double doors made of dark wood. She knocked once, then opened them. The office was enormous. One wall was entirely windows, offering a view that rivaled the apartment. The rest was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves that actually held books, not just decorative spines. And there, behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of mahogany, was Dominic Russo. He looked better than yesterday, color back in his face, though I could see the careful way he held himself, protecting his wounded side. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a car, his dark hair perfectly styled, his jaw shadowed with calculated stubble. He looked every inch the powerful businessman, but I'd seen him bleeding in an alley, vulnerable and mortal, and I couldn't forget it. Emma. He stood as I entered, a gesture that felt oddly old-fashioned. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words came out sharper than I'd intended. His lips quirked. Not really. Sit, please. I sat in one of the chairs across from his desk, trying not to feel like I was about to be interrogated. Marco had disappeared, closing the doors behind him, leaving us alone. Dominic settled back into his chair with visible care. How was your first night? Strange. Surreal. I met his eyes. I kept waiting for someone to tell me there'd been a mistake. No mistake. He opened a drawer, pulling out a folder. We need to discuss the practical aspects of this arrangement. First, your financial situation. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside were bank statements, account numbers, figures that made my vision blur. I couldn't finish the sentence. Enough for 2 years of comfortable living, as I said, plus a discretionary fund for anything you might need. His tone was businesslike, as if we were discussing a corporate contract. The apartment is yours for the same period. After that, we'll reassess. Reassess what? Whether you still need my protection. Whether my enemies still see you as a target. He leaned back, studying me. I hope, by then, the answer to both questions will be no. And you can return to whatever life you choose. And if the answer is yes, his eyes darkened. Then we continue. The weight of that statement hung between us. 2 years, maybe more. My life intertwined with his, whether I wanted it or not. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Really? There has to be more than just... What, gratitude? Debt repayment? For the first time, something cracked in his controlled facade. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk, and his eyes held mine with an intensity that stole my breath. You want honesty, Emma? Here it is. When I woke up in that alley and saw you, this girl with terrified eyes and bloody hands, staying with a monster because it was the right thing to do, something in me shifted. In my world, goodness is weakness. Kindness gets you killed, but you... He paused, seeming to search for words. You were kind without expectation of reward. You were brave without knowing what it would cost you. And yes, I owe you a debt. But more than that, I want to keep you safe because people like you, people with light still inside them, are rare. And I've destroyed so much light in my life. I don't want to destroy yours too. His words hung in the air between us, raw and unexpected. I didn't know what to say, how to respond to this glimpse beneath the armor he wore so carefully. You're not a monster, I finally whispered. His laugh was bitter. You don't know what I've done. The blood on my hands would drown you. Maybe. But monsters don't save waitresses from poverty. Monsters don't worry about destroying someone's light. I leaned forward, surprising myself with my boldness. You're dangerous, yes. Probably terrifying when you want to be. But you're not a monster, Dominic Russo. Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or something deeper. He stood abruptly, moving to the windows, his back to me. Even injured, he moved with that predatory grace that made my pulse quicken. 2 weeks ago, I had a man killed, he said, his voice flat. He stole from me, lied to my face, thought I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. I cared. So I had him dealt with. He turned to face me, and his expression was carved from stone. Does that sound like someone who isn't a monster? I should have been horrified, should have run from the room, from him, from this whole impossible situation. But instead, I thought about the desperation in his voice in that alley, the way his hand had gripped mine like I was his last anchor to the world. It sounds like someone who lives in a world I don't understand, I said carefully. A world with different rules, different consequences. You're trying to rationalize it, to make me palatable. He crossed back to the desk, bracing his hands on it as he leaned toward me. Don't. I am what I am, Emma. I've made my choices, and I live with them. You need to understand that if you're going to be part of my life, even peripherally, then help me understand. I stood, refusing to be intimidated. Tell me the truth. All of it. Who tried to kill you? Why? And why am I really in danger? He studied me for a long moment, something like approval flickering across his features. You want the truth? Fine. The man who tried to kill me was Francesco Moretti. He was my second in command until 6 months ago when I discovered he'd been skimming profits and feeding information to the Calabrese family. My enemies. His voice hardened. I exiled him rather than kill him. A mistake, as it turns out. He came back with hired guns, caught me leaving a meeting, and put 3 bullets in me before my security could respond. And he saw me. He and his men both. They watched you find me, watched you stay. They'll assume I told you something, gave you information they could use, or they'll try to use you to get to me. His jaw clenched. Either way, you're leverage now. A weakness they think they can exploit. Am I? The question escaped before I could stop it. A weakness? His eyes locked with mine, dark and fathomless. You're becoming one. The admission felt like a physical touch, electric and dangerous. The air between us shifted, charged with something I didn't dare name. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. Yes, he didn't move either. You should. We stood there, frozen in that moment, until his phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw there made his expression shudder completely. Marco will take you home. Stay in the apartment tonight. Don't go out. Don't answer the door for anyone except my people. His voice had gone cold, professional. I'll be in touch. Dominic. Go, Emma. Now. The dismissal stung, but I went. Marco was waiting in the hallway, his face carefully neutral as he led me back to the elevator. The drive back to the apartment was silent, tense with things unsaid. 3 days passed with no word from Dominic. 3 days of living in luxury while feeling like a prisoner, of staring at my phone waiting for messages that didn't come, of watching the city below and wondering what game I'd become a pawn in. Marco or Luca checked in daily. Always professional. Always careful not to tell me anything useful. Mr. Russo was handling business. Mr. Russo would contact me when appropriate. Mr. Russo ensured my continued safety. But I didn't feel safe. I felt like bait in a trap I didn't understand. On the 4th day, I broke. I called the car service, ignored Marco's warnings when he called me back immediately, and gave the driver an address I'd found in the folder Dominic had given me. One of his legitimate businesses, a restaurant in the heart of downtown, upscale and expensive, the kind of place I'd never have entered in my old life. The driver tried to dissuade me. I insisted. He made a phone call in rapid Italian. I ignored him and walked into the restaurant anyway. It was beautiful, all dark wood and soft lighting, with tables set with crystal and silver. A hostess in an elegant black dress intercepted me immediately. Do you have a reservation? I need to see Dominic Russo. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Tell him Emma is here. Her professional smile faltered. I'm afraid Mr. Russo isn't. He's here. I'd seen the SUV outside, recognized the driver. Tell him I'm not leaving until he sees me. She hesitated, then disappeared through a door marked private. I stood there, very aware of the other diners staring at me in my nice but not expensive jeans and sweater, clearly not belonging in this world of wealth and privilege. 2 minutes later, the door opened again. Not the hostess, Dominic. He looked furious. He crossed the restaurant in long strides, his hand closing around my elbow with barely controlled pressure. What the hell are you doing here? You've been ignoring me for 4 days. I kept my voice low but firm. I wanted answers. So you decided to march into one of my public businesses, making yourself visible, painting a target on your back? His voice was a dangerous whisper. Upstairs. Now. He practically dragged me through the private door, up a narrow staircase, into an office above the restaurant. The moment the door closed behind us, he rounded on me. Do you have any idea how reckless that was? How stupid? Don't call me stupid. Anger flared hot in my chest. You can't just lock me away and expect me to sit quietly waiting for your attention like some what? Like someone whose life is in danger? Because that's exactly what you are. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration radiating from him. Moretti has people everywhere, eyes everywhere, coming here, making a scene. I didn't make a scene. I asked to see you. In front of witnesses? In public? Jesus, Emma. He turned away, his shoulders tight with tension. You don't understand how this works. How careful we have to be. Then explain it to me. My voice cracked. Stop treating me like I'm made of glass, like I can't handle the truth. You brought me into this world. Now let me actually be part of it instead of keeping me in a gilded cage. He spun back to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes made my breath catch. I'm trying to protect you. By ignoring me? By leaving me alone with my thoughts and my fear and no information? I stepped closer to him, driven by frustration and something else. Something dangerous. I gave up my life for this, my job, my apartment, my independence. The least you can do is treat me like I matter. You think you don't matter? His voice dropped to something low and rough. You think I've been ignoring you because you don't matter? Emma, I've been ignoring you because you matter too damn much. The confession shocked us both. He looked like he regretted it immediately, his jaw clenching as he turned away again. What does that mean? I whispered. It means you're a complication I didn't anticipate. It means every time I think about you in that apartment, safe and comfortable because of me. Something in my chest. He stopped, shaking his head. It means I should have kept my distance. Should have had Marco handle everything. Should have let you fade into the background of my life where you'd be safe from more than just Moretti. Safe from you, you mean? He didn't deny it. Yes. I should have been afraid. Should have recognized the warning for what it was. But instead, I felt something reckless rising inside me. Something that had been building since that night in the alley. What if I don't want to be safe from you? He went completely still. Emma. I'm not stupid, Dominic. I know what you are. I know what you've done. But I also know what I felt when you looked at me in that office. When you said I was becoming a weakness. I moved closer. Close enough to see the pulse jumping in his throat. I know what I feel every time you're near me. And it's not fear. It should be. But he didn't move away. If anything, he leaned slightly toward me, as if pulled by invisible strings. Probably. My heart hammered against my ribs. But it's not. The tension between us was a living thing, electric and inevitable. I could see him fighting it, see the war in his eyes between what he wanted and what he knew he shouldn't take. Then his phone rang. The spell shattered. He answered it with a curt, "What?" His expression changed immediately, going cold and dangerous. When? Where? He listened for a moment, his eyes on me, something dark and protective flaring in their depths. Double the security at her building, now. And send a car, we're moving her. Moving me where? Alarm shot through me. What's happening? He ended the call. Moretti knows where you live. His men were spotted watching your building an hour ago. We need to get you somewhere safer. But I thought the apartment was supposed to be secure. Nothing is ever completely secure with men like him. He was already moving, pulling out his phone again, firing off texts. Pack what you need. You're coming with me. With you? Where? He met my eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach flip. My home. My private residence. The one place even Moretti won't dare touch. Because? Because it's a fortress. Because I'll be there. And because... He stopped himself, shaking his head. Because I'm not letting anything happen to you. Not now. Not ever. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat flooding through my veins. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay. Within an hour, we were in his SUV, Marco driving while Luca followed in another vehicle. Dominic sat beside me in the back, his body tense, his hand resting on the seat between us. Not quite touching me, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. I'm sorry, I said quietly, for putting myself at risk, for not listening. He glanced at me, and his expression softened fractionally. You were right. I was keeping you at a distance, using protection as an excuse. His hand shifted, his fingers brushing against mine. But that ends now. If you're going to be in my life, Emma, then you're going to be in it completely. No more hiding. No more half measures. His fingers closed around mine, and I felt that touch all the way to my bones. What does that mean? I asked, even though I thought I knew. His smile was dark and full of promise. It means welcome to the deep end, Emma Hartley. Try not to drown. Dominic's private residence wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something ostentatious. A mansion with columns and gates, something that screamed wealth and power. Instead, we pulled up to a converted warehouse in a gentrified neighborhood, all exposed brick and industrial windows. From the outside, it looked almost modest. Almost. But the moment we stepped inside, I understood. This wasn't about showing off. This was about control. The interior was open concept, with soaring ceilings and steel beams that had been left deliberately exposed. But every window had bulletproof glass. Every entrance had reinforced doors and biometric locks. Cameras were discreetly positioned in every corner, and I'd counted at least 6 guards positioned around the perimeter before we even entered. This is where you really live, I said, taking it all in. This is where I'm safe, he corrected, leading me up a steel staircase to the 2nd floor. The penthouse is for show, for meetings with people who need to see success. This is home. And it looked like a home, in ways the penthouse hadn't. There were books stacked on tables, personal photographs on shelves, a coffee mug left on the kitchen counter. Signs of life, of someone who actually existed here rather than just passed through. He showed me to a guest room, spacious and comfortable, with its own bathroom and a view of the city through those impenetrable windows. Your things will be here within the hour. Make yourself comfortable. You're safe here, Emma. I promise. How long do I need to stay? His jaw tightened. As long as it takes to neutralize Moretti. Days, maybe weeks. Weeks? The reality of it hit me hard. Dominic, I can't just hide here indefinitely. You can, and you will. His voice had gone hard again, that tone that brooked no argument. Moretti made his move. He showed his hand. That means he's desperate, which makes him dangerous. Until I handle this, you stay here where I can protect you. Handle this, I repeated. You mean kill him? He didn't flinch. If necessary, yes. I sank onto the bed, my hands shaking. This was real. All of it. I wasn't playing at being part of his world anymore. I was drowning in it. Dominic crouched in front of me, his hands coming to rest on my knees. The touch was warm, grounding. I know this is terrifying. I know you didn't ask for any of this. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I looked into his dark eyes and saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine concern, real fear for my safety. Not because of his debt or his honor, but because of something else. Something neither of us had named yet. I trust you, I whispered. His hands tightened on my knees. Then trust that I will end this. And when it's over, you can decide. Stay in my world or go back to yours. No pressure. No obligation. I'll give you that choice, Emma. I promise. And what if I don't want to choose? What if I want both? His eyes darkened. That's not possible. My world destroys everything good it touches. Eventually, it would destroy you too. You don't know that. I do. He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. Get some rest. I have calls to make, arrangements to finalize. Dinner will be at 7. He left before I could argue, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that felt like a statement. The next 3 days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Dominic worked from his home office, taking calls in Italian and English, his voice carrying through the open space. Sometimes calm and measured, sometimes cold and threatening. I caught glimpses of the man he was in his business, the ruthlessness that had built his empire. But in the evenings, he was different, softer. We ate dinner together each night, meals prepared by a chef who appeared and disappeared like a ghost, leaving elaborate dishes that Dominic barely touched while I savored every bite. We talked about safe things, books, music, my childhood in a small town upstate, his memories of his grandmother who'd raised him after his parents died. He never mentioned how they died. I didn't ask. On the 4th night, he found me in his library, a room lined floor to ceiling with books, some in Italian, some in English, all clearly well read. I'd been there for hours, curled in a leather chair with a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Good choice, he said from the doorway, making me jump. Revenge and redemption, one of my favorites. Does he get his redemption? I asked. I haven't finished it yet. Dominic crossed the room, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Whiskey, probably older than me. That depends on your definition of redemption. He gets his revenge. But at what cost? He settled into the chair across from me. I've always thought Dantes was a fool. For seeking revenge? For believing it would make him whole again. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. Revenge is satisfying in the moment. But it doesn't heal the wound, it just creates new ones. I studied him, seeing the pain beneath the philosophical observation. Is that what you're doing with Moretti? Creating new wounds? No, his eyes met mine. With Moretti, I'm preventing future ones. There's a difference. Is there? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're very good at asking questions I don't want to answer. Someone has to. I set the book aside. You're very good at hiding behind philosophy and cold logic. But I see you, Dominic. The real you. And you're not as hard as you pretend to be. Emma. My name was a warning. It's true. You care. Maybe too much. That's why you're so protective. Why you push people away before they can see how much you actually feel. He set his glass down with controlled precision. And what do you think I feel for you? The question hung between us, dangerous and inevitable. We'd been dancing around this for days. This pull between us that grew stronger every moment we spent together. I think you're terrified, I said softly, because I'm not supposed to matter this much. I'm supposed to be a debt paid, a problem solved, but somewhere along the way, I became something else. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. You should hate me, fear me, want nothing more than to escape this life and never look back. Probably. I stood too, closing the distance between us. But I don't. Emma, don't what? Tell you the truth? That I think about you constantly? That every time you're near me, I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified and exhilarated at the same time? I touched his arm, feeling the tension coiled beneath his expensive shirt. That I'm falling for a man I should run from. He turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. If you fall, I'll catch you. But Emma, if I fall... He reached up, his hand cupping my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. If I fall, we both go over the edge, and I'm not sure either of us would survive it. Maybe that's okay, I whispered. Maybe some things are worth the risk. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I felt that touch everywhere. You're asking me to be selfish, to take what I want without thinking of the consequences. I'm asking you to let yourself feel, to stop punishing yourself for crimes I don't even know about. I leaned into his touch. I see you, Dominic, not the monster you think you are. The man who saves broken people because he knows what it's like to be broken. The man who protects with everything he has because he's lost too much. The man who's terrified of wanting something good because he thinks he doesn't deserve it. I don't deserve you, he said roughly. That much is certain. Maybe not. But you have me anyway. Something broke in him then. I saw it happen. Saw the moment he stopped fighting. His hand slid into my hair, and he pulled me to him with a desperation that matched my own. His lips found mine, and the kiss was everything I'd imagined and more. Fierce and tender, claiming and questioning all at once. I kissed him back with everything I had, pouring 4 days of tension and longing and fear into it. His other arm came around my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I could feel his heart hammering against mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This is a mistake, he murmured. Probably the biggest one I've ever made. I smiled against his lips, but I'm making it anyway. Emma? His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. With a curse, he pulled it out, his arm still around me as he read the message. His expression shifted immediately. All business, all danger. What is it? I asked, though I already knew. Something had changed. Moretti. His voice had gone cold. He's made a move. Attacked one of my warehouses, killed 2 of my men. His jaw clenched. It ends tonight. Fear flooded through me. You're going after him. I have no choice. He's forcing my hand. He looked at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. Duty versus desire. Revenge versus the woman in his arms. I need you to stay here. Marco and Luca will guard you. Don't leave for any reason. Promise me. Dominic, please, let someone else handle it. Don't go. I have to. He kissed me again, hard and fast, like he was trying to memorize the feel of me. I have to finish this. For you. For us. For any chance at a future where you're safe. Then come back to me, I said fiercely, gripping his shirt. Whatever you have to do, however you have to do it, just come back. I will. It was a vow. I promise, Emma, I will come back to you. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. I paced the warehouse like a caged animal, ignoring Marco's attempts to calm me, Luca's offers of food and distraction. All I could think about was Dominic walking into danger, putting himself in Moretti's crosshairs to protect me. It was past midnight when I heard the SUV pull up outside. I ran to the door before Marco could stop me, my heart in my throat. Dominic walked in, and relief crashed over me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. He was unharmed. Not a scratch on him, though his clothes were rumpled, and there was something dark on his sleeve that might have been blood. It's done, he said simply. Moretti is dead. His operation is finished. You're safe now, Emma. Truly safe. I didn't ask how. Didn't ask for details I probably couldn't handle. I just ran to him and he caught me, his arms crushing me against him. You're okay, I whispered against his chest. You came back. I promised. His hand stroked my hair. I always keep my promises. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. Marco and Luca quietly disappeared, giving us privacy. Finally, Dominic pulled back enough to look at me. You have a choice now, he said. The one I promised you. The danger is gone. You can go back to your life. Not the diner, but something better. I'll set you up with whatever you need. A new apartment, a job, references. You can walk away from all of this, from me, and be free. Or, my heart pounded, or you stay. His eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. You stay in my world, knowing what it is, what I am. You let me be selfish and keep you close. You let this, he gestured between us, be something real. No more pretending it's just protection or debt repayment. Just us. Honest and terrifying and real. I thought about the diner, about my old life of exhaustion and barely surviving, about the safety of being invisible, unremarkable, about walking away from this dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become everything. I'm terrified, I admitted. So am I. I don't belong in your world. Neither did I once, but I learned. And you're stronger than you think, Emma. You survived poverty. You survived finding a dying mafia boss in an alley. You survived being dragged into a war you didn't start. You can survive this too. Survive me. If you want to. What if I don't just want to survive? I reached up, touching his face. What if I want to live? Really live, for the first time in my life? His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face. Then stay. Stay with me. Let me give you the world, not because I owe you, but because I want to, because somewhere between that alley and this moment, you became mine, and I became yours. I'm still a waitress from nowhere, I said, but I was smiling too. No, he kissed me softly. You're Emma Hartley, the woman who saved my life, the woman who saw past the monster to the man, the woman brave enough to fall for someone like me. Another kiss, deeper this time. You're not from nowhere anymore. You're home, here, with me. And standing there in his arms, in his fortress that didn't feel like a prison anymore, I realized he was right. I'd spent years just surviving, just existing. Always on the edge, always afraid. But this, his world, his darkness, his dangerous love, this felt like
staying.
Living. I whispered against his lips. I'm choosing you, choosing this. Choosing us. His arms tightened around me, and I felt him exhale like he'd been holding his breath. Thank God. because I don't think I could have let you go." We stood there as the city lights glittered beyond the bulletproof windows, two broken people who'd somehow found each other in the darkness. His world was dangerous, complicated, full of shadows and secrets, but it was also full of loyalty and protection, and a man who'd moved heaven and earth to keep me safe. And maybe that was enough. Maybe love didn't have to be safe and simple. Maybe sometimes it was supposed to be terrifying and all-consuming and worth every risk. 3 months later, I stood in that same library, wearing a dress that cost more than my old apartment, preparing for a charity gala where I'd meet the other families, the legitimate face of Dominic's empire. I was nervous, still learning the rules of this world, still sometimes feeling like an imposter. But then Dominic appeared in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, and the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the world who mattered, made everything else fade away. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. I took it, feeling the calluses that reminded me he was more than just a businessman in expensive suits, feeling the strength that had pulled him back from death in that alley, feeling the gentleness that touched me like I was precious. "Ready," I said, because I wasn't the terrified waitress anymore who'd spent her last $10 helping a stranger. I was Emma Hartley, standing beside Dominic Russo, carving out a place in his dangerous world, not as his debt or his obligation, but as his equal, his partner, his love. And if that made me reckless or foolish or hopelessly naive, I didn't care. Some gambles were worth taking. Some men were worth falling for, even when, especially when, they could destroy you. As we walked out into the glittering night, his hand warm in mine, I knew I'd made the right choice, not the safe one, not the smart one, but the one that felt like coming home.